In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Our Father who art in heaven. Amen. Damn it, I couldn't sleep again tonight. I had tried every way possible to pray to God, hoping he could help me, but it seemed useless. That crazy doctor, that psychiatric hospital, after all these years, it still haunts me every single night. I burned that place down to ashes, but the psychological wounds did not disappear with the flames. They are still here every night. Hurry, we need to get out of here. Something is wrong with this place. God, what was that sound at the end of the hallway? Run, run now. My name is Miles Carrot, 32 years old, leader of a hazardous materials cleanup team. Our job is not as glamorous as the name suggests. We are just four close friends who go into places everyone else avoids like the plague. Old factories contaminated with chemicals, abandoned buildings filled with the smell of damp decay, unfinished construction sites covered in industrial waste that nobody wants to touch. We wear full protective suits from head to toe, gas masks covering our faces, and every day we deal with dust, rotten odors, and mysteries buried by time. It is not a profession many people admire. The pay is not extraordinary either. But it is enough for me to make payments on the small house I bought for my mother, enough for us to feel that our work has meaning, returning safety to places that have been forgotten. And most importantly, it keeps us together. Four people, four completely different personalities, but we had been bonded like family for nearly 5 years. Me, Miles, calm and careful almost to a fault. I always read every line of a contract, always checked equipment twice before starting a job. I did not believe in ghosts, but I respected things I did not understand. To me, safety rules were sacred laws, because in this profession, even a small mistake could cost you your life. Hangmilla, 35 years old, my best friend since middle school. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and could carry a 50-kilogram roll of insulation for dozens of meters without even breathing heavily. He was the strongest person on the team, worked endlessly, but had a temper like fire and spoke with brutal honesty. He never bowed his head to anyone. To him, everything could be explained by science. Rumors and ghost stories were nothing more than childish nonsense. But Hang had one weakness that few people knew about. He hated absolute silence. Whenever he had to stand still in an empty room, he always felt as if someone was watching him. Leela Lasry, 28 years old, the only female member of the team. She graduated with a degree in environmental chemistry. She was responsible for analyzing samples, checking toxicity levels, and advising on safe handling procedures. She was small and soft-spoken, but extremely strict and precise in her work. Leela had a special sense. She could detect the smallest changes in the air, smells, and even the emotions lingering in a space. Before accepting any job, she always researched the history of the location first. She said, "When you enter a place, you should know what it has witnessed." Jessica Kohler, 24 years old, the youngest member of the team, had joined us a year and a half earlier. She was quick, skillful, learned fast, and was the most cheerful person among us, always having a joke ready to ease the tension. But Jess had one weakness: endless curiosity. Anything locked, forbidden, or hidden, she wanted to uncover at any cost. She often said, "If there's nothing to hide, why would people forbid it?" We did not have a fancy office. We only had an old 2010 pickup truck, silver gray with scratches covering much of the paint. The truck bed was always filled with tools, protective gear, toxic material detectors, and specialized equipment. People around the area knew us, so most contracts came directly from clients looking for our services. On the afternoon of October 10th, while we were resting after finishing the cleanup of an old warehouse, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was a deep, rough male voice, like someone who had smoked for many years. "Am I speaking with Miles Carrot, leader of the environmental cleanup team?" "Yes, that's me. May I ask who this is and what you need?" "My name is Atvin. I represent Crescent Investment Group. We have a facility that requires asbestos removal before demolition." "I heard your team works carefully and always meets deadlines." "Yes, we always do our best to finish on schedule. Could you tell me more about the location and the scope of the work?" The moment he mentioned the location, I felt my breath stop for a second. Crescent Grove Psychiatric Treatment Center. Everyone in this region knew that place. Located on top of an isolated hill, more than 30 kilometers from the nearest town, the center had suddenly shut down at the end of 1978 and had been completely abandoned ever since. Locals called it the House of Souls that never left. There were countless strange rumors surrounding it. Patients who entered never came back, cries and footsteps that could still be heard during stormy nights. No one dared to stay there overnight, not even once. No team was willing to accept the job, no matter how high the payment was. The location is quite remote, and there are many rumors surrounding it, I said slowly. We need to know the exact scope of work, the deadline, and the payment. The entire main building and auxiliary structures. Most ceilings and partition walls contain asbestos. You will need to remove it, package it, and transport it according to regulations. The deadline is before November 15th, which gives you 25 days. Payment, $350,000. I froze. That amount was nearly 3 times the market rate for similar work. That number is quite high. Are there any other conditions? Only one condition. You absolutely must not enter the deep basement area or the old storage room on the west side of the field. Those areas are outside the scope of the work. You must leave them untouched, do not open any doors, do not move anything, and do not ask or investigate any information about the history of the center. Do you accept or not? I hesitated. This amount of money could solve many problems for the entire team, upgrading all our equipment, even buying a new vehicle. But the condition forbidding access to a specific area, combined with such an unusually high payment, clearly meant there was a reason behind it. Let me discuss it with my team members and I'll call you back in half an hour. After hanging up, I told everyone everything about the conversation. Hang laughed loudly. $350,000 just to clean up an old building? What's there to be afraid of? The basement is off limits, so we just don't go there. Simple as that. Leela frowned, her voice serious. I heard this center shut down suddenly without any warning. All the staff left overnight, leaving behind records and personal belongings exactly as they were. No one knows the real reason. The reason was probably bankruptcy or some safety violation, Hang dismissed. Jesse became excited. With that kind of money, we can upgrade everything. Besides, there are 4 of us with all our equipment. What could possibly stop us? I sat silently thinking. A vague feeling of unease slowly rose inside me, as if we were being invited into a trap covered in gold. But I also understood the situation of the entire team. I understood what this money meant to each of us. All right, I said, we'll take it. I looked directly at each of them. But I want to make this clear first. We follow every single condition in the contract. No one enters restricted areas without permission. No one works alone. Any unusual sign, no matter how small, must be reported to me immediately. Everyone nodded in agreement. I called Arthaven back to confirm the contract and arranged to meet at the foot of Crescent Grove Hill the next morning at 8:00 a.m. The next morning we left at 6:30. The truck moved along a road that gradually became narrower. Dense forests on both sides blocked much of the sunlight. The closer we got to Crescent Grove Hill, the colder the air became, even though it was the middle of a bright autumn season. There were no birds singing. The only sounds were the engine of the truck and leaves rustling softly in the wind. When we reached the bottom of the hill, we saw a luxurious black sedan already waiting. A man stood leaning against the car door, wearing an elegant gray suit and holding a leather briefcase. He looked around 50 years old. His face was gaunt, his eyes had dark circles beneath them like someone who rarely slept, and his movements were slow and cautious. As we stepped out, he approached and shook my hand. His hand was freezing cold, his skin dry and rough like paper. Hello, Mr. Miles, thank you for accepting this job. I'm Arthur Veng. Hello, Mr. Veng, we arrived on time. Can you take us up there and discuss the details now? He nodded, then looked at each member of our team one by one. His eyes seemed like he was evaluating us, or perhaps searching for something he needed to confirm. Before we go up, I want to remind you once again of the important conditions. First, you may only work in the areas marked on the map. The entire field behind the building and both basement levels are strictly forbidden. Second, you are not allowed to move, read, or remove any documents, recordings, or personal belongings left behind. Third, every evening before leaving, you must close and lock every entrance you have opened. And finally, if you encounter anything unusual, any feeling that something is wrong, leave immediately and contact me. Do not try to investigate or handle it yourselves. His voice did not sound threatening. Instead, it sounded like a desperate request filled with worry. Hang frowned. Mr. Veng, we're workers, not children wandering around for fun. We understand the rules and will follow them. But can you explain why there are so many strange restrictions? That is a request from the investors, Veng answered evasively. They only want the asbestos removed before demolition. They do not want the past of this place to interfere with the project. Accept these conditions and the contract becomes valid. I took the contract and carefully read through every clause again. Everything was exactly as he had explained. There were no hidden details or additional conditions. I signed my name, then passed it to each team member to sign one by one. When I handed the contract back to Veng, I asked, "Why is someone only taking care of this now? Why wait 40 years before dealing with the asbestos?" "There were many plans before, but they were all cancelled," Veng replied briefly. "Now the conditions are finally right. This is the key to the main gate and all the entrance doors. I won't go up there with you. I'll stay here and wait. If anything happens, call the number I gave you. Please be careful." He handed over the key ring, his hand trembling slightly. Then he turned back to his sedan, got in, and drove away immediately without looking back even once. We watched the car disappear around the bend, then turned our eyes toward the narrow dirt road winding up the hill. At the top, the Crescent Grove building appeared faintly through the early morning mist, looking like a gigantic beast sleeping, waiting to awaken. "That man looked like he had just seen a ghost," Jesse whispered. "Maybe he did," Leela replied, her voice serious. "We should head up there." We got back into the pickup truck and followed the rough dirt road upward. The higher we climbed, the more the silence surrounded everything, becoming so heavy that it was difficult to breathe. When the truck stopped in front of the large rusted iron gate, I looked up at the old wooden sign that was still standing there. The faded paint was worn away, but the words were still readable. Crescent Grove Psychiatric Treatment Center, a place where souls are healed. I sighed and turned to the others. "All right, remember what I said and remember the contract terms. Work carefully, stay safe. We'll finish the job, get paid, and leave. Nothing here can hurt us if we maintain discipline. Now prepare the equipment and let's go inside." I stepped out of the truck, feeling the cold creeping through my clothes. I looked toward the long, massive building ahead of us, its dark windows like eyes carefully watching every move we made. I turned the key inside the lock of the iron gate. A metallic click echoed, a dry, hollow sound that spread through the silent surroundings. The heavy gate slowly opened, layers of rust breaking apart and falling to the ground beneath our feet like the ashes of time. A freezing gust of air rushed directly into our faces, carrying the smell of mold, rotten paper, and decaying moisture. All of us instinctively pulled our collars tighter and shivered, even though the sun was still shining warmly above. The temperature outside was around 25 degrees Celsius, but stepping through the gate felt like entering a completely separate world. The temperature dropped to just above 10 degrees. The bone-chilling cold slipped through every gap in our clothing and touched our skin directly. The main building appeared before us. It stretched for more than 200 meters, built in an inverted U-shape, with 3 floors above ground and a semi-basement level buried deep beneath it. The red brick walls had turned a dull gray-black after 40 years of exposure to rain and sunlight. Most of the glass windows were shattered, and the torn curtains fluttered gently in the breeze like distant figures waving for us to come closer. In front of the building was a field of wild grass reaching waist height, growing chaotically and covering the old concrete pathway. There were no tire marks, no human footprints suggesting anyone had entered this place for many years. Only small traces of wildlife remained, the paths of forest animals, mice, squirrels, and birds crossing over one another. "Damn, this place is cold like an open freezer," Hang muttered, lifting the heavy equipment bag onto his shoulder while looking around uncomfortably. "Are we sure there isn't some hidden air conditioning system still running here? 40 years without electricity and it's this cold. That's a little too strange." "There has been no electricity here since the day it closed. There's no source that could power anything," Leela replied. She held her gas detector in her hand, carefully observing every corner of the trees and every crack in the walls. "This is the kind of cold that comes from abandonment, from places that have gone too long without human warmth, without laughter or voices, leaving behind only loneliness and things that were buried." We followed the old concrete path covered with weeds toward the main entrance. The key still fit perfectly into the lock, as if someone had just oiled it yesterday. When the half-inch thick wooden door opened, a long, terrifying creak echoed across the courtyard, as if the building itself was complaining about being awakened after a 40-year sleep. Inside was darkness. A thick blackness covered everything like ink, with only a few rays of sunlight coming through broken windows and falling onto the wooden floor. One by one, we turned on our flashlights. 4 white beams cut through the air, revealing countless tiny dust particles floating like ashes. The main hallway was more than 3 meters wide, with a ceiling nearly 4 meters high, creating a feeling that was both empty and suffocating. The old wooden floor creaked beneath every step, the sound echoing and repeating several times as if someone was walking behind us, copying every movement of our footsteps. On both sides were functional rooms, most of the doors slightly open. The furniture remained exactly where it had been on the final day of operation. Rows of waiting benches, a dark wooden reception desk, and stacks of paperwork scattered across the surface, as if the staff had only just stepped away moments earlier to answer a phone call. There was even a cup of coffee that had completely dried up, leaving behind a thick black residue in the corner of the desk. A broken pencil lay across an open notebook page. "This is strange," Jesse said, stopping to look at a small desk lamp that was still standing upright on the reception counter, untouched and undamaged. "They left so suddenly that they didn't take anything with them. They didn't lock the doors, they didn't clean up the documents. Why would they do that?" "We don't need to know why, and we don't have the right to be curious," I reminded her, my voice firm and serious. "Our job is to inspect, mark, and remove the asbestos according to the contract. Remember the rules I told you. Don't separate from the group, don't enter restricted areas without permission, don't touch personal belongings, and don't move anything. I've divided the work according to the map. Hang and Jesse will handle the west wing. Leela and I will handle the east wing and the second floor. Every hour, exactly on time, we meet back here in the main hallway to check in and report anything unusual." We split up. The footsteps of the 4 of us echoed through the building, overlapping with each other and creating the unsettling feeling that there were more people walking alongside us in the darkness. Leela and I walked down the east wing corridor. Each patient room, examination room, and treatment room remained completely intact, frozen exactly as it had been 40 years ago. The beds were still neatly arranged with blankets and pillows. Glasses of water on the bedside tables had dried out completely, leaving behind mineral stains. Leela held her gas detector, occasionally stopping to record the readings in her notebook. "The asbestos concentration here is much higher than normal, almost 3 times the permitted limit," she said quietly, her voice showing some surprise. "And there's something strange. I'm not detecting nearly as much mold or bacterial decomposition as expected. The wooden walls, ceilings, and papers are all dry. There's no sign of moisture damage. It's as if the air here has been kept constantly dry and cold, preventing anything from growing or decaying for 40 years. I nodded, but deep inside, my uneasiness only grew stronger. We went up to the second floor through the wooden staircase in the middle of the hallway. Every step produced a disturbing creaking sound. This floor contained the doctor's living quarters and private psychological consultation rooms. As we passed a door with a brass nameplate that still looked unusually polished, I stopped. "Dr. Nathaniel Gray, head of psychiatry." The door was unlocked, slightly open by a narrow gap. Inside was a large wooden desk, a bookshelf reaching all the way to the ceiling filled with old psychology books, and a leather swivel chair turned away from the door, facing the dark corner of the room. "Let's go, Miles." "This room isn't part of the area we need to process," Leela gently called, placing a hand on my shoulder. I was about to turn away when I heard a small but very clear sound from inside the room, like someone had just slightly dragged the chair across the wooden floor. I immediately shined my flashlight inside. The chair was still in the same position, facing away from us. There was no one there. No windows were open for the wind to move it. "It's just the wood expanding and contracting because of the temperature difference," I told myself, trying to calm my thoughts. But the cold sensation running down my spine refused to disappear, as if someone was staring directly at my back from inside the darkness. We continued checking the other rooms, but I constantly felt that a pair of eyes was watching every movement we made, from the office of the head psychiatrist. The first day passed with nothing but exhausting work. We measured, marked the ceiling and wall areas containing asbestos with red paint, and recorded the surface measurements. At noon, we ate inside the pickup truck at the bottom of the hill. None of us wanted to remain inside the building, even for a 30-minute break. Hank complained about the unbearable silence, saying he felt like someone was always listening to our conversations. Jessie, meanwhile, kept glancing toward the restricted east wing, her eyes filled with curiosity. That evening, after locking every entrance, securing the gate, and leaving the property, I felt as if we had just walked away from a sleeping beast, and it could wake up at any moment. As the truck drove down the hill, I looked into the rearview mirror. Crescent Grove appeared faintly in the fading evening light, like a massive creature silently waiting for its prey to return. On the second day, the strange events became much clearer. They were no longer just vague feelings. While we were working on the first floor, we suddenly heard heavy footsteps moving across the ceiling above us. The sound was steady and solid, like someone wearing iron-soled boots walking back and forth. "Who's up there?" Hang stopped working, grabbed his crowbar, and looked up at the ceiling. "Is anyone up there?" "No," I answered, my heart beginning to race. "Everyone is here." The footsteps continued, moving from one end of the hallway to the other, slowly, steadily. Then suddenly they stopped directly above where we were standing. Silence for a few seconds, then knock, knock, knock. 3 clear knocks came from the ceiling above us. Jessie swallowed hard. "Maybe it's just wildlife, rats or squirrels or something." Leela shook her head. "No, the footsteps had weight. The rhythm was steady. Those were human footsteps." We immediately rushed upstairs to check. The hallway was completely empty. There were no footprints on the thick layer of dust. No windows were open for any animals to get inside. Only the faint sound of wind whistling through the broken glass remained. By the third day, Jessie discovered a storage room full of cassette tapes in the basement level while collecting material samples. He shouted loudly for us. When we ran down the narrow staircase, we saw him standing in front of an iron door that had broken off its hinges. Inside was a large room, with tall wooden shelves covering all 4 walls from floor to ceiling. Thousands of cassette tapes were neatly arranged in order. Each tape had a label clearly showing the patient's name, date, treating doctor, and case file number. "Oh my God, these are all the therapy records from this place," Leela whispered, her hand trembling slightly as she gently touched one of the tapes on the lower shelf. Everything was still intact, with no signs of damage or being moved. "Get out of here, right now." I ordered, my voice strict. "The basement area is absolutely forbidden according to the contract. We shouldn't stay here any longer, and we shouldn't touch anything." But at that moment, Jessie had already secretly taken 3 tapes and an old recorder that was still sitting on a small wooden table in the corner of the room. He quickly stuffed them into his equipment bag behind his back. I saw what he did but didn't say anything immediately. I planned to seriously warn him after we left the room. That night, when everyone was resting inside the locked pickup truck, Jessie pulled out the recorder and the 3 tapes onto the floor of the vehicle. Hank laughed at him, teasing his unnecessary curiosity, but no one stopped him when he inserted the tape into the machine. He pressed play. The old static sound crackled for several seconds. Then the deep voice of a male doctor, warm but slightly harsh and cold, came through clearly. "Patient number 419, Taram. Date, month, year 1977. Can you tell me what you see in the dark room?" A young female voice answered, trembling with fear. "There is someone standing in the corner of the room, doctor. A person wearing a long white coat reaching down to the feet. The face has no eyes, no nose, no mouth. That person said we should never try to understand things that belong to the darkness, and if we try to understand them, we will be dragged away with them forever." The doctor's voice became colder and more determined. "There is no one in the corner of the room. Thara, that is only a hallucination caused by your mental illness. We will increase your sedative dosage and use deeper hypnosis to help you escape these irrational fantasies." Jessie turned off the recorder and scoffed. "Just a mentally ill patient talking nonsense. What's so scary about that?" But I noticed Leela's face had turned pale. She looked toward the building on the hill through the vehicle window, her voice becoming quieter. "People say that the head psychiatrist Nathaniel Gray had very unusual treatment methods here, methods that didn't follow normal standards. He believed that to heal the soul, people had to directly confront their deepest fears. He even used extreme psychological shocks, electric shock therapy, and complete isolation. There are rumors that many patients couldn't endure it, and some either committed suicide or became much more unstable after being treated by him. Rumors are just rumors. There's no evidence. I said that, although deep inside I also felt an uncomfortable sense of unease spreading. Everyone get some sleep. We still have a lot of work tomorrow. Don't let old stories affect our job. But that night, none of us slept well. I drifted in and out of an uneasy sleep, hearing someone softly call my name from somewhere near the top of the hill. When I opened my eyes and looked through the truck window, I saw the silhouette of Crescent Grove clearly in the distance, even though it was nearly a kilometer away. It looked as if the building was standing right beside the vehicle, waiting for us to return. On the fourth day, the changes began appearing clearly in each person. Hank started standing motionless, staring into dark corners with an irritated expression. Sometimes he would suddenly turn around and shout someone's name, only to become confused when he realized no one was there. When I asked him, he answered in a troubled voice. I hear someone calling my name all day, a voice I know very well, but every time I turn around, there's no one there. Leela sensed the changes in the atmosphere more clearly. The air here is changing every hour, every minute. Sometimes it feels angry, full of hatred, like something wants to crush your breath. Other times it feels filled with endless pain, with so much despair that you almost want to cry. It's like the emotions of hundreds of people are trapped here, with no way out, endlessly spinning inside the same old suffering. As for Jesse, his curiosity only grew stronger. He kept secretly entering areas we had been told were forbidden whenever no one was watching. He found handwritten notes from Dr. Gray inside desk drawers, documents describing strange treatment methods, and even a list of patients marked as no longer responding to treatment. Transfer to final stage. Apply method number 9. By the 5th day, while we were working on cleanup tasks on the first floor, we suddenly heard a horrifying scream coming from the staircase leading down to the basement. "Jesse!" I shouted, grabbing my flashlight and crowbar before rushing toward the stairs, my heart pounding violently. The other two followed closely behind, their faces pale. When we arrived, we saw Jesse standing against the basement hallway wall, his face white as paper, breathing heavily as if he had just escaped death itself. His eyes were fixed on a small iron door at the end of the corridor, filled with absolute terror. There is someone inside," he stammered, his voice trembling. I heard knocking from inside, weak cries for help calling my name. We looked toward the small door at the end of the hallway. It was the heavy isolation room door, with a small metal hatch used to deliver food and check on patients. The lock on the outside was still intact. Complete silence surrounded us, leaving only the sound of our own heavy breathing. You're probably hearing things because you're exhausted and under too much stress. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though my eyes remained fixed on the door in disbelief. No one could have survived in here for 40 years without food, water, or air. It's impossible. But at that exact moment, the knocking came again, clearly through the steel door. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was weak and desperate, unmistakably like someone using the last of their strength to beg for help from inside. Leela stepped closer a few feet and called through the small metal hatch. "Who is in there? Who are you?" There was no answer. Only the knocking became louder and more frantic, as if whoever was inside had panicked after realizing someone had arrived. "We have to open it and check." Jesse grabbed my arm, trembling. Someone could have been trapped here without anyone knowing, abandoned during the chaos when this place shut down. "No," I stopped him, shaking my head. "This area is strictly forbidden according to the contract. The contract prohibits us from opening doors or moving anything. And how could someone survive here for 40 years without food or water? That cannot happen." "But what about the knocking?" Jesse insisted, his voice almost breaking into tears. "We can't leave someone behind when they're calling for help." While we were arguing, the knocking suddenly stopped, completely, abruptly, as if someone had covered the person's mouth. Instead, a hoarse, dry voice like something struck by lightning echoed clearly through the door, speaking each of our names with a familiar tone that sent chills through our bodies. "Mike, Hank, Leela, Jesse, you finally arrived. We have been waiting for you for a very, very long time." All of us froze in place as if turned to stone. That voice knew every one of our names perfectly, not a single mistake. "Who are you?" I shouted, forcing myself to regain control. I raised my flashlight and aimed it directly at the door. "What are you?" "How do you know our names?" The voice answered again, calm and steady, empty yet filled with anticipation. "We are the ones who were left behind, the ones who were never allowed to leave. Doctor, Gray promised he would heal us, but he locked us here forever. And now it is time for you to listen to the remaining recordings. It is time for you to know the truth." The voice suddenly stopped. No more sound followed. We stood there staring at each other under the shaking beams of our flashlights. No one spoke. No one argued anymore. No one mocked the idea of ghosts or the supernatural. We had all heard it clearly. We had all felt the presence of something that should never have existed here. "We have to get out of here immediately," I ordered, my voice more serious and terrified than ever before. "Everyone pack your equipment. Leave the basement, get to the truck, and leave this place right now. We are not staying here another second." We rushed up the stairs, our footsteps echoing throughout the building. We slammed the basement door shut behind us and locked it tightly. When we reached the front yard, I turned back and looked at the building one more time. Under the light of my flashlight, I saw several blurry figures standing behind the broken windows, staring down at us. They stood completely still, lined up in silence. When I blinked once, they disappeared instantly. But the feeling of being watched, of being waited for, remained. It pressed against my chest like a 1,000-kilogram stone. I knew we had entered a cursed place, a place where the past had never truly ended. A place where terrible secrets and crimes buried for 40 years were still waiting to be exposed. And the cassette tapes Jesse found were not just old medical records. They were evidence of the horrific acts that had taken place here. And the restless souls trapped inside were still waiting for someone to come, to listen, to learn the truth, and to set them free. We quickly got into the truck. The engine roared as we rushed down the hill. No one dared to look back one final time. Inside the vehicle, nobody said a word. Only heavy breathing filled the silence, along with each person's thoughts about what we had just experienced. What had seemed like a simple cleanup job had turned into a confrontation with a dark past, and we all knew we would not be able to leave as easily as we had arrived. The truck sped down the rough dirt road. The tires kicked stones and gravel to both sides. The roar of the engine shattered the silence covering the entire forest. No one spoke. Only heavy breathing remained. Everyone stared straight ahead. No one dared turn around to look at the Crescent Grove building slowly shrinking behind us. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my hands still trembling slightly. The hoarse voice from behind the steel door continued echoing in my mind. The voice that called each of our names so naturally, as if it had known us for a very long time. When we reached the main paved road, more than 5 kilometers from the foot of the hill, I finally pulled the truck over and turned off the engine. The world became quiet again. Only the wind moving through the leaves and the sharp chirping of insects remained. I turned to look at the other three. Hank leaned back against his seat, eyes tightly closed, cold sweat covering his forehead. Leela held the gas detector tightly against her chest, her face still pale. Jesse lowered his head, his hands clenched together, his shoulders slightly shaking. We sat there in silence for nearly 10 minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Hank opened his eyes. His hoarse voice broke the silence. Should we go back to town and report this to the police? Maybe there really is someone trapped in there, or maybe there are bodies that were forgotten. Report what? I replied, my voice exhausted. That we heard our names being called from behind a door that has been locked for 40 years, that we saw figures standing behind the windows. They'll send us to a psychiatric hospital, not to Crescent Grove, to investigate. But we all heard it, we all saw it. Leela spoke, her voice trembling but certain. That wasn't an illusion. Something truly terrible happened in that place, and it is still there, waiting for someone to reveal the truth. I sighed and rubbed my face, trying to calm myself. We don't have any reasonable evidence except our own feelings and our own story. Besides, the contract includes a strict confidentiality clause. If we abandon the job without permission, not only will we lose the payment, but we could also face a huge lawsuit for damages. I paused for a moment before continuing. But most importantly, I feel that if we run away like this, we will never escape this feeling of being watched. It already knows our names. It was waiting for us to come. It will find us no matter where we hide. So what are you saying? Hank looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. We go back there, we face whatever that thing is. We're going back. I nodded, my voice firm without hesitation, but not to complete the contract. We're going back to uncover the truth of what happened there, about method number 9, about Dr. Gray, and about the people who were left behind. First, we listened to all the tapes Jesse took. Jesse flinched. He reached into the tool bag behind him and pulled out 3 cassette tapes and the old recording machine. He placed them on the middle seat, his hands trembling. I only took 3. Each one has Dr. Gray's name written as the recorder. And there's a note written in red ink. Internal notes, forbidden from distribution. Leela picked up each tape, carefully examining them under the truck's interior light. The dates are all from the end of November 1978, exactly around the time the center suddenly shut down. Right before all the staff disappeared without leaving any messages. She carefully inserted the first cassette into the recorder and pressed the play button. The static noise echoed for a few seconds. Then the voice of Dr. Nathaniel Gray came through, calm, steady, with a hint of pride and excitement, like a scientist describing the greatest invention of his life. November 12, 1978. Internal notes. Treatment method number 9 has produced results beyond expectations on the first test subject. Instead of using sedatives or electric shocks to suppress symptoms like conventional treatments, we have created a completely isolated environment where the patient's deepest fears are amplified to their maximum level, day after day, hour after hour. We do not eliminate the darkness within their minds. We nurture it, feed it, allow it to grow until it becomes stronger than the person themselves. When the darkness becomes strong enough, it will completely take over the body and consciousness, leaving the patient fully obedient, without independent thoughts, without emotions, without their former memories. They will become perfect instruments, never resisting, never revealing secrets, never able to speak about what we have done. The machine paused for several seconds. Then Dr. Gray's voice returned, trembling slightly with overwhelming excitement. Subject number 742, Thorin, the first person to be completely affected by the method. After 3 months locked inside a completely dark room without seeing sunlight, hearing only our voices, and receiving food only when she obeyed commands, she has changed completely. No more crying, no more screaming, no more calling for her mother like she did when she first arrived. When I give an order, she follows immediately without hesitation, without a single expression on her face. 3 more subjects have shown similar results this past week. We are standing before a historic turning point in the field of psychiatry, a discovery that will change everything. The tape stopped. All of us sat in silence, goosebumps covering our skin. They treated patients like test subjects, Jesse whispered, his voice filled with anger and disgust. They locked them in dark rooms, tortured their minds until they lost themselves, all just to serve their insane ambitions. Leela inserted the second tape. This time, Dr. Gray's voice sounded different. It was rushed, filled with anxiety and fear. The excitement had disappeared, replaced by panic. November 27, 1978, something has gone wrong. Treatment method number 9 has completely gone beyond our control. The things we awakened inside their minds were not created by us. They were already there, waiting for the opportunity to awaken. It does not simply take control of their consciousness. It changes the very nature of who they are, transforming them into something else. Subject number 742 told me that she is no longer Clara. She said it is something that has existed in the darkness for hundreds of years, only borrowing her body to walk among us. It claims to sense the presence of others like itself, trapped inside different psychiatric hospitals around the world, waiting for the day they awaken. Yesterday, 3 subjects unlocked their isolation rooms with their own hands and walked through every floor, trying to free the remaining patients. They did not use force. They only had to stand in front of the doors, and the locks opened by themselves as if controlled by some unseen power. I tried calling the police. I tried contacting my superiors. No one answered. I now understand that we have invited something truly evil into this world, and we no longer have any way to send it back. It has taken control of the entire center. I will lock down the entire facility and cut off every entrance and exit. I will remain here and try to find a way to stop it, to undo what we have created. If anyone finds these recordings, please never open the rooms in the deepest basement. Never try to understand what is waiting down there. Bury this entire place forever. Do not allow anyone else to step inside. The tape stopped. No one spoke. A freezing silence filled the entire vehicle, heavy enough to make breathing difficult. Hank swallowed hard. So, the center wasn't closed because of bankruptcy or relocation. No one abandoned this place because of ordinary reasons. All the staff ran away in the middle of the night, leaving everyone behind, leaving the patients trapped inside with that thing. Leela inserted the final tape. This time, Dr. Gray's voice was completely broken. It trembled with absolute desperation and terror, sometimes stopping abruptly as if he was looking directly at death itself. December 1st, 1978, it has come to my office. It said it waited 40 years for a group of people brave enough to walk through the gates, to hear the entire truth and not run away the moment they heard the voices. It said your names clearly. Miles, Hank, Leela, Jesse. It said you will be the ones who decide its fate, and the fate of all the souls trapped here. If you accept its commands, it will give you everything you desire, wealth, power, every wish you have ever had. But if you refuse, it will keep you here forever, together with the others, continuing the endless cycle of experiments. I am writing this with the hope that you will hear it before it is too late. It is not a single ghost. It is the collection of all the pain, injustice, and hatred of those who died here, those who were tortured until they lost their humanity. It is stronger than anything you can imagine. It can take the appearance of your loved ones. It can tell you things only they would know, using those memories to deceive you and turn you against each other. But it has one weakness. It is only strong when you are afraid, when you doubt each other, when you separate from one another. If you stand together, trust each other, refuse to believe its lies, and never allow it to divide you, you can stop it. Remember, never go alone, never trust what appears before your eyes. And if possible, burn this entire building. Burn everything inside so the trapped souls can finally be released. Please correct the terrible mistake I created. End this nightmare that has lasted for far too long. The voice suddenly cut off. Then came terrifying screams, the sound of paper being torn, heavy impacts, and finally complete silence. We sat there staring at one another. Every missing piece had finally fallen into place. Why the contract offered an unusually high payment. Why the basement area was absolutely forbidden. Why Arthur looked like a man who had already seen a nightmare when he met us. Maybe he knew part of the truth, or maybe that thing itself had manipulated everything, arranging events to bring exactly the four of us here. Should we buy more gasoline and supplies in town, then come back? Jesse asked. His voice was still trembling, but there was determination in his eyes. We could burn the entire place from a distance. I shook my head. If we burn it without facing it directly, it will escape. It has waited for 40 years. It will find a way out before the fire reaches it. And most importantly, we still don't know if there are more souls trapped inside, waiting to be freed. We cannot allow that thing to wander into the outside world. We are going back, together. Hank spoke firmly, gently tapping my shoulder. We are a team, no one gets left behind. Leela nodded. I'm going with you. I want to make sure no one else has to suffer through pain like that ever again. We drove back to the nearest town and bought everything we needed. Full gasoline cans, spare flashlights, cut-resistant gloves, medical supplies, and several other necessary tools. No one slept at all during the journey. Each of us prepared ourselves mentally for what was about to happen, thinking about our families and the things we had never gotten the chance to do. When the first light of dawn appeared, we set out again toward Crescent Grove Hill with an unbreakable determination and a unity that nothing could tear apart. When the truck stopped in front of the iron gate, the morning sunlight shone down, but it did nothing to reduce the dark atmosphere surrounding the place. The building still stood there in silence, its black windows like eyes waiting for us to return. We stepped out of the vehicle, each carrying a gasoline can, flashlight, and tools. We held each other's hands tightly for a moment before walking through the gate. Remember the rules, I whispered to everyone. Stay together, never separate, don't trust what it shows us, don't let it divide us. We opened the main entrance and stepped inside. The cold air remained exactly the same, but this time we no longer felt a vague sense of fear. Instead, we felt prepared to confront the truth. We walked straight down to the basement, toward the isolation room door where we had heard the voice calling yesterday. When I reached out and touched the lock, it suddenly released itself gently, as if it had never been locked at all. The door slowly opened. Inside the room there was no one, only a metal table standing in the center. On top of it was the final tape, with large red letters written across it. For those who come after the final choice. Jesse stepped forward, picked up the tape, and placed it into the recorder, which was still strangely functioning. A voice came through, but this time it was not threatening. Only exhaustion remained, and a desperate desire for freedom. You came back. I knew you would. I am not your enemy. I am only the collection of all the pain buried here. Do what must be done. Free all of us. The recorder stopped. We began spreading gasoline throughout every corner of the room, the hallways, and every floor of the building, carefully making sure nothing was missed. The sharp smell of gasoline mixed with the scent of decay and mold, signaling the end of this nightmare. As we prepared to walk up the stairs and leave, suddenly all 4 of our flashlights flickered at the same time. The lights weakened, then almost completely died. Only a faint red glow remained, covering the darkness around us. A slow, heavy sound echoed from the end of the hallway. Click, click, click. The sound of dragging footsteps against the old tile floor repeated again and again, cold and terrifying. We stopped, our backs pressed against one another. Our flashlights pointed directly toward the sound. Slowly, emerging from the weak red beam of light, was a tall, thin human figure standing motionless in the darkness. He wore a doctor's white coat that had turned gray with age, covered in dark stains and dried reddish-black marks. A yellowed surgical cap covered half of his forehead. His face was pale as paper, his skin stretched tightly over sharp cheekbones. Deep dark circles surrounded his hollow eyes, and his black pupils stared at us with hatred and madness. In his right hand, he held a large surgical scissors. The sharp blades reflected the faint light, still carrying traces of dried red stains. His left hand hung loosely at his side, fingers twisted unnaturally, as if waiting to grab and crush his prey. It was Dr. Nathaniel Gray. Even though he had been dead for nearly 40 years, he still stood before us, the embodiment of his crimes and his revenge, a soul forever bound to the place he had destroyed. You think you can leave. His voice was rough and broken, like rusted metal scraping against itself, coming from a throat that no longer held any warmth. You came here, learned all my secrets, planned to burn everything and walk away free. No one leaves after knowing the truth. Never. Gray. I shouted, forcing my voice to remain steady despite my heart pounding violently inside my chest. You died 40 years ago. Everything you caused, your cruel experiments, the innocent deaths, the suffering you created, all of it ends today. He laughed. A dry, lifeless laugh echoed through the narrow hallway. Ends? I created it. I am the master of this place. I will never allow you to destroy everything I have accomplished. You will stay here. You will become my next test subjects. You will finish what I never completed. He suddenly rushed forward. His speed was impossible, faster than anyone could imagine from a corpse that had decayed decades ago. Hank shouted and lifted the gasoline can in front of himself as a shield. Stay back. If you come any closer, I'll burn this entire place down right now. Dr. Gray did not stop. He swung his left arm and struck the gasoline can with tremendous force. Hank was thrown backward, crashing into the wall and losing consciousness for a moment. Before we could react, Gray was already in front of Jesse. The surgical scissors in his hand moved like lightning. Jesse instinctively raised his right hand to block. A scream of pain tore through the silence. The sharp blade sliced through his right index finger. Blood poured out instantly, dripping onto the old tile floor. Jesse grabbed his injured hand, his face turning pale, cold sweat running down his forehead as he collapsed onto the ground. Jesse! Leela screamed and rushed forward, pulling out a cloth to bandage his wound. Her face was pale with terror. You monster! Dr. Gray stood there laughing. Blood remained on the blades of the scissors. His eyes were filled with satisfaction as he looked at the pain of others. This is only the beginning. Now it is your turn. I raised the gasoline can, pointing it directly at him. My voice was firm. There was no hesitation. If you take one more step, I will burn you right here. You have no power anymore. The souls you tortured, they have waited all these years to be freed, not to remain your slaves forever. Dr. Gray stopped. His eyes, filled with hatred, stared directly at me, then shifted toward the other 3. You think fire can kill me? I am already dead. I have become a part of this place, a part of all the pain that exists here. Fire will only make me stronger, allowing me to dissolve into everything around me. Then we will burn everything together, I replied. We are ready. But what about you? Are you ready to disappear forever along with everything you created? I raised the match. The small, fragile flame was weak, but it was enough to illuminate his horrifying face. At that moment, whispers began echoing from every corner of the hallway. Not threats, not fear. They were voices of resistance. Voices of those who had been trapped for 40 years, finally rising against the person who had tormented them. Doctor. Gray looked around. For the first time, a rare expression of fear appeared on his face as he felt the change. The very things he had created were turning against him. No, no, this is impossible, he muttered, stepping backward. His movements were no longer confident. They are mine. Everything belongs to me. Nothing belongs forever to someone cruel and consumed by ambition, Leela shouted, her voice firm and unwavering. They will all be free, and you will pay for every crime you committed. I dropped the match. The flame touched the ground. Fire exploded instantly around his feet. Doctor, Gray let out a horrifying scream as the flames surrounded his body. He tried to rush forward and attack us one last time, but the shadows surrounding him held him back, preventing him from taking even a single step toward us. His screams, the cries of suffering, and the roaring flames merged into one terrifying sound that echoed through the building. Go! I ordered. We have to get out of here now. We helped Hank stand up, supported Jesse as he walked, and rushed up the stairs, escaping from the burning building behind us. When we reached the front yard, intense heat struck our faces. The entire Crescent Grove building was engulfed in red flames, illuminating the sky above the hill. We stood there watching as Leela continued treating Jesse's injury, tightening the bandage and pressing firmly to stop the bleeding. Hank slowly regained consciousness, still dizzy but without any serious injuries. Are you okay, Jesse? I asked, looking at his carefully wrapped wound. Jesse nodded. He placed his remaining hand against his chest, staring at the flames consuming the place where so much suffering had happened. I'm okay. I may have lost a finger, but at least we ended everything. No one else will have to suffer like that anymore. We stood there until the flames gradually weakened. Only ashes remained. Only blackened wooden frames stood beneath the fully risen morning sun. Dr. Gray, along with all the secrets, crimes, and pain of 40 years, had been destroyed by the fire. No more voices calling our names. No more figures watching from the windows. Only true silence remained over the hill. When we got into the truck and drove away, Jesse sat beside the window, looking back at the hill one final time. His left hand gently touched the white bandage wrapped around his right hand. He would carry that wound for the rest of his life. A reminder of humanity's cruelty, a reminder of the value of courage, and a reminder of the strength found in unity. We never received the contract payment. We never returned to that place. We never saw Artvin or anyone connected to Crescent Grove again. Our team continued our work, traveling to forgotten places, cleaning up the abandoned remains of the past. But after our journey to Crescent Grove, we created a rule of our own. Before leaving any location, we always took 1 minute of silence for those who had once been there. For the stories that had never been told, and for the truth that always finds a way to emerge no matter how long it has been buried. Sometimes when strong winds pass through distant hills, I still remember that journey. The recordings, Dr. Gray, and the final choice we made. And I understand now that darkness is only powerful when we allow it to divide us, when we are afraid, when we stand alone. But when we stand together, trust each other, and protect one another, there is no horror powerful enough to defeat us. Wounds may heal, but the lessons remain forever. And wherever the truth has been buried, there will always be someone willing to uncover it, to bring justice back to the souls who were wronged.